After a crushing loss in the Big Ten Tournament Championship, Maryland men's lacrosse now knows its path to make it back to Memorial Day weekend. We'll take a look at how the Terps can repeat and break down the rest of their season coming up next on the Left Bench in Focus.
He was the only guy on the field that played last year.
It starts with extra work. There's a lot of shots that I said I would want to have back.
Thanks for joining us here on the Left Bench in Focus, presented by Terps Sports Central. I'm Matthew Neus, here alongside Jessie Schwartz. And Jessie, with the NCAA tournament in a few days, it's the perfect time to talk about all things men's lacrosse.
Yeah, Matt, that's right. But first, we need to break down that Big Ten championship loss in Baltimore.
Yeah, let's get to it. After exacting revenge for their regular season loss to Johns Hopkins on Thursday in the Big Ten semifinal, the Terps attempted to continue the revenge tour into Saturday's championship against Michigan. The beginning of the game was back and forth until two Bryce Clay goals and a Peter Thompson strike put Michigan out to a 2-goal advantage after the first 15 minutes. Eric Spanos canceled out another Clay goal to begin the second, but then the Michigan barrage began. Michael Boehm tallied a second quarter hat trick, including this juice goal off the faceoff to bring his goal tally to 4. Ryan Cohen added a goal, and the Wolverines held a 6-goal advantage over the Terps at the half. Braden Erksa tried to get Maryland going with the opening goal in the second half, but nothing would go right for the guys in white. Michigan goalie Hunter Taylor stopped 14 of Maryland's 19 shots, and Michigan captured their first Big Ten crown with a 14-5 victory. Michigan's double over Maryland this season was the first two wins for the Wolverines over the Terps program history, and helped guide Michigan to its first ever NCAA tournament appearance. Despite the championship loss, the hard-shell season still is not over yet. On Selection Sunday, they earned the number 4 seed in the tournament. They'll face off against Army in the first round on Saturday in College Park at 7:30 p.m. Here's head coach John Tillman on having a more younger squad in the tournament this year.
Because you want them to do well, and a lot of them don't have that experience, so you're just trying to speed that up and speed that development up. So, you're trying to make sure that you're super thorough, you're detailed, you're making sure that, to your point, like they're in the right headspace, because a lot of them, this is the first time. I mean, Brett brought it up to me last night. He's like, there was one point in the game Saturday where he was the only guy on the field that played last year. And we were playing in a Big Ten championship. And he's like, yeah, everybody else on the field did not play much last year at all.
And Army West Point should make for an exciting matchup with the Terps on Saturday. If Tillman's squad can make it out of the first round, they will likely see a familiar foe later on in the tournament.
Alex Gary joins us in Studio B to see who the Terps will have to face in order to be playing on Memorial Day weekend. Alex?
Yeah, guys, the Terps found themselves at the bottom left of the bracket and should find themselves with some favorable matchups if they can get hot at the right time. If Maryland gets past the Black Knights, then the Terps will have a date with Princeton or Penn State, two teams the Terps already know pretty well. But let's start with the Princeton Tigers. They didn't show much of a fight against the Terps back in late February. In Brian Ruppel's first start of the season, the Terps took care of business, defeating the Tigers 11-5. Since then, Princeton struggled throughout the rest of the regular season, losing 5 more games. Weak Ivy League play propelled the Tigers to 6 more wins as they entered the Ivy League tournament, where they dominated against Penn and Yale, taking the crown. The Tigers are led by sophomore attackman Coulter Mackesy, who lit up the scoreboard for the Orange and Black, scoring 49 goals and 23 assists. Mackesy versus Makar will sure to be a rematch for the ages if both teams advance. Now, the team that would have something to say about that, Penn State, the 5th-ranked Nittany Lions. Now, Penn State matched up with the Terps earlier this season in a tight affair, which saw Maryland defense stand tall to close out a 13-10 W. Since then, they have not lost until they played the Big Ten tournament winners, but more on them in a second. The Nittany Lions are anchored by sophomore goalkeeper and Big Ten Specialist of the Year, Jack Francione. Francione has been a brick wall for Penn State all season, with a save percentage of .582 and 13.83 saves per game. In a potential matchup with the Terps, Francione could be a difference maker. And now, if we wander up a little into the bracket, Maryland could see the last possible team they want to face in the Final Four, their kryptonite in the Michigan Wolverines. The Maize and Blue had the Terps number all season long, defeating them in the regular season and in the Big Ten tournament. The Wolverines lit up the scoreboard in both their matchup against the Terps, tallying 30 goals in 2 games. The Terps just don't have an answer for Michael Baum, who got to the net with ease. 4 goals in College Park and then 5 in the Big Ten tournament. Despite the Wolverines' dominance, one of the hardest accolades in all of sports is beating a team 3 times. So maybe the Terps have a little bit of fate on their side. Off against Michigan is the team Maryland defeated last Memorial Day to win the Natty, Cornell. The Big Red dominated in the Ivy League all season with an 11-3 record on the year. Cornell is led by #1 overall pick from the PLL draft, Gavin Adler. Adler heads a dominant defensive unit for Cornell that makes getting to the net a dangerous endeavor. Alongside Adler is Ivy League Player of the Year, CJ Kirst. Kirst lit up the scoreboard in every game he played this season. He netted 63 goals in the season and leads the NCAA with 4.5 goals per game. Now, Delaware and Marist will face off in the playing game to face the top overall seed, and the last team Maryland could face en route to a Memorial Day weekend, the Duke Blue Devils. Now, Duke has been dominant all season long and have the hardware to prove it, taking home the ACC championship and boasting a 13-12 record. The Blue Devils have a 2-headed monster on attack, Brendan O'Neill and Dyson Williams, that lead the charge. The dynamic duo leads one of the top scoring offenses in the league for a team that has unlimited range. The Maryland defense will be put to the test in a matchup against Duke, with a trip to the finals on the line. Now, Matt and Jesse, the Terps look like they have a pretty favorable route at least to the Final Four, but if this season has proved anything, it's been unlike any other, and the hardshells, anything could happen.
Yeah, the big thing I'm looking forward to is, if they beat Army on Saturday, a potential matchup in the second round in Annapolis. Maryland fans like to travel well. That could be something to see in the second round.
Yeah, with a home game and then nearly another home game, I'm really expecting the Terps fans to show out. Thanks, Alex, for giving us that rundown. And as Alex said before, this is a season the Terps and Tillman aren't really used to. So let's take a look back at the impressive postseason success Tillman's squad has had before. In the 12 seasons that Tillman has been at the helm of Maryland lacrosse, they have never missed a shot to play in the postseason. Even in years without a championship to celebrate, Tillman's squad has made it to the Final Four 7 of the last 8 years. The Terps also brought home 2 titles, in 2017 and 2022. Last season, the Terps brought home an undefeated season and the hardware. They are the first team since 2006 to win a championship and go undefeated, which was the first time a D1 school went 18-0.
A lot of players from Tillman's impressive squads have made it to the pros, and now he can add a few more names to that list. Brett Makar and Kyle Long will again be teaming up, this time in the Premier Lacrosse League with Atlas Lacrosse Club. Makar is drafted 3rd overall and was the 3rd defender taken off the board. He joins Lawn stick Gavin Adler of Cornell, who was also selected by Atlas 1st overall. Long had to wait until the 4th round to hear his name called and would team up with Makar in the PLL. Makar and Long make up 72 former Terps drafted in the PLL, the most of any program in the country.
Stay with us because when we come back, Kevin Brown of Inside Lacrosse will tell us all about this season for the Terps and what is still to come.
We'll also hand out some hardware and awards and crown our top 5 plays. Don't go anywhere.
$16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
It took 20 years and I got my 3rd child who was 17 at the time.
It's so cool to watch the adult that you've become, and you really have done as much for us as you think we've done for you.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Left Bench in Focus, brought to you by Terps Sports Central. I'm Matthew Neus, and that's Jessie Schwartz. And Jessie, we've been talking a lot about the tournament so far, but like we said before, with their performance in it in the last few years, how could we not?
And why not talk about it for a little bit longer?
That's right. We now welcome on TLB alum Kevin Brown of Inside Lacrosse to give us his take on what he's seen so far from the Terps.
Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. Nice to trace back the roots a little bit with the Left Bench. And first off, just nice to see the show evolve to what it's become now. You guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, now, Kevin, we have to go back a little while until we find a Maryland team bringing home no Big Ten hardware. Is that a testament to the fact that this team has struggled this season, or is it to the fact that the Big Ten was a strong conference as a whole?
Well, I think it's always been a strong conference, right? It's some of the biggest schools around the nation coming and driving a lot of resources into the sport. What you see this year from Maryland lacrosse is a lot of struggles coming off a season when they were one of the historically great champions, coming off an undefeated season that hadn't happened in quite some time, since 2006. It was the last time when Virginia did it. So there's going to be some growing pains with the offense, and especially I know Brett Makar and Ajax Apatello coming back defensively. You expected great things down there, and they've performed. So not having that alpha guy step up offensively has really been key.
And as we talked about just a second ago, we talked about if the Terps were struggling a little bit more, or if it's just a product of a stronger Big Ten conference. This season, the Terps have lost more games at home than they have in 5 previous seasons combined. What do you think the main reason is for that? And do you think those losses and close games will make them better prepared in this upcoming tournament?
Yeah, I think it really speaks to down the stretch of these games, you need someone to step up offensively in those clutch moments. Last year it was Logan Wisnauskas. The year before it was Jared Bernhardt. This year it's been freshman Braden Urksa who stepped up mostly. And to put it frankly, I thought Kyle Long would step up a little more offensively coming into his last year of college. Owen Murphy, I thought, had some great strides in the offseason, but he hasn't been consistent enough. So it's really been down to having someone as that number one go-to option offensively to step up down the stretch of these games.
Yeah, and you've mentioned it. In years past, Maryland always have seemed to have that go-to guy on the side of the ball, like a Logan Wisnauskas, Jared Bernhardt, to name a few. Is lacking that alpha male, as Coach Tillman put it, is the reason for the struggles on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I think so, and it's understandably so. Their second-line midfield has stepped up tremendously. They've got some of the innate chemistry coming in from the scout team last year with Siracusa and a couple other guys with that unit. And then you look at the first line midfield of Kyle Long, Jack Brennan, and others, and they've sort of underwhelmed, right? So you look into the playoffs, they're coming up against a really stingy Army team who's super disciplined, and it's going to be a really tough out coming up on this weekend.
And Kevin, there were obviously questions about Ryan Ruppel when he took Logan McNaney's spot after the injury, but he has quickly proved himself between the pipes this season. He's had a spectacular year, but how do you think the pressure of his first NCAA tournament will affect his play?
Well, Jesse, judging by the way he stepped up in between the pipes in that overtime outing in Charlottesville against Virginia, not at all. I don't think it's going to be too big a stage for him. He's kind of proven that he can make those big-time stops with that 3-save flurry in overtime. Like I mentioned at Klockner against Virginia, that kind of captured lacrosse audiences across the nation. It went very viral, and he stepped in there, and he's been a vocal guy. He's kind of earned his right to continue playing in between the pipes.
Well, Kevin, that's all we got for you. Thank you so much for being here with us.
You can follow along with Kevin's coverage on his Twitter at KevBrown89 and read his work on Inside Lacrosse's website at InsideLacrosse.com.
Now it's about time we hand out awards for the Terps. We have to start off with our most valuable player, the senior faceoff guy himself, Luke Weirman. Weirman had an unbelievable year in 2022 and has continued it this season. He was named to the All-Big Ten first team and in the top 25 for the Tewaaraton Award. Weirman has also written his name in Maryland's record book a few times. He sits second on the career all-time faceoff list and sixth for a single season. He's played in all 15 games this season, won 234 faceoffs, and corralled 125 ground balls. Congrats to Luke on being our MVP.
He heard his name called in the PLO draft, and he still dons the iconic Maryland lacrosse #1. This season's Defensive Player of the Year is Brett Makar. Makar has been a menace to opposing attacks all year long. The long pole has caused 19 turnovers and collected a team-high 47 ground balls. And if you thought he wasn't a threat defending his own goal, you can count on Makar for a pole goal every once in a while. Congrats to Brett on being named our Defensive Player of the Year.
And now we look at one freshman who is making a huge impact on the attack for this Maryland squad. This season's Offensive Player of the Year is Braden Urksa. Urksa has scored 22 goals for the Terps this season and has been in the starting lineup since the middle of February. The freshman is a force on the attack with 22 goals and 21 assists on the season. He was named 2023 Big Ten Freshman of the Year, our Freshman of the Year, and now our Offensive Player of the Year.
When the reigning 2022 NCAA Tournament Most Outstanding Player Logan McNaney suffered a season-ending injury early on in the season, questions were raised as to how the Terps could replace such a presence between the pipes. But the Terps didn't have to look any further than freshman Brian Ruppel, who was this season's Freshman of the Year. Ruppel got his first start in a collegiate game against Princeton, and to say he made a statement would be a massive understatement. He stopped 14 shots that day in Maryland's 11-5 win over the Tigers, cementing himself into the starting role for the rest of the season. The freshman has recorded double-digit saves in 8 games this season with a career-high 15 against Virginia. More on those saves later. Congrats to Brian on being our Freshman of the Year.
And now it's time to talk about our Pro Terp, and it's someone who we named our Terp of the Week many times last year, Jonathan Donville. Donville is a forward for the Panther City Lacrosse Club of the National Lacrosse League. He is a 5-time Rookie of the Week in the league. The attackman notched 23 goals and recorded 90 points in his 2023 season. Congrats to former Terp Jonathan Donville on his early success in the pros and being named our Pro Terp.
Yeah, and we handed out all those end-of-season awards in Pro Terp. Let's get into some top plays because it's been such a good season for the Hardshells.
Yeah, let's see what they did this season.
Alrighty.
And first up, we have Daniel Maltz scoring an incredible goal against Notre Dame. Look at the way he gets that up just into the top corner to put one in the back of the net against what was one of the nation's top teams.
Yeah, and we talked about Brett Makar a couple minutes ago. How about a nice little pole goal, leading the rush, good pass from Urksa, and finishes it bottom or top of the goal.
And now we talked about Urksa and how much of a force he's been, and look at that goal. He gets the ball right in front of the net and just spins and manages to put it in. That one's going to be on all the highlight reels.
Yeah, and in at number 2, it is football player turned lacrosse player Dante Trader evading not one but 2 Syracuse players, digging their cross midfield. Still going, Dante Trader makes another move and then finishes with a nice bounce shot to beat Syracuse's goalie. What a goal from Dante Trader.
And now we're going to talk about Ruppel, who we've mentioned today. Look at him in Klockner Stadium in Virginia, making 3 saves to win that game in overtime for Maryland. We talked about it earlier. He's been a force in the net.
Yeah, and that'll do it for our last In Focus show of the semester and our last show of the school year.
Thanks for keeping up with our coverage all year long.
We'll see you in the fall.